guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Doing a late night recording. It's almost midnight here, so I'm going to keep my voice a little softer so I don't disturb all the neighbors. But I have an interesting story here, and you know, a lot of times when I do stories, you guys out there are like, yeah, but that's a celebrity or that's a rich person or, you know, that's a professional kickboxer or whatever. Well, they don't go around interviewing your average, everyday people, so it's very hard for me to find some of these stories. But in this case, I still think it's very telling because while it is about the weirdo Gwyneth Paltrow who likes to make candles that are scented like her vagine, and she's a little bit loony, she still says something that's kind of interesting, which is, again, as we always know, no matter who you are, number one, you're never good enough, and number two, she can't help but compare. The higher the notch count, the higher the number of people that she's been with, it's just going to happen where you compare. Now, this is during an interview where they outright ask her, but you know this has to be crossing her mind when she's either with Brad Pitt or Ben Affleck. So this is from Fox News. Gwyneth Paltrow says Ben Affleck was excellent in bed compared to Brad Pitt. Now imagine you're Brad Pitt and you see this headline. It's got to make you feel a little bad. But if you're Ben Affleck, you're going to feel great until you read through the interview, and well, we'll get there. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. When it comes to the exes, Gwyneth Paltrow has a stacked roster of A-list celebrities, including Brad Pitt, Ben Affleck, and Chris Martin. During a podcast interview, Paltrow, 50, spilled the secrets on whether Pitt or Affleck was a better kisser and who is better in bed. Now, I know you guys may say, like, dude, who cares? Like, I mean, I don't care what Gwyneth Paltrow thinks about her exes, but the point is that if you're with a woman and she's never been with any other man, she has no point of reference of anything. As far as she knows, you know, now we know this isn't exactly right, but if the internet didn't exist, I guess you could say, as far as she knows, $60,000 a year is a comfortable income, very comfortable income, depending on where you live. 5 inches is plenty of enough to please a woman. 5'10" is tall enough, and you hit the gym, and you're masculine enough, and male pattern baldness happens to a larger portion of men. But now, because the internet exists, women have decided, girls will put 5'10" on a dating app, and when they're talking to their friends, and they say, "Oh, I only date 6 foot or taller," the rest of the women say, "Okay, well, I guess that's the new standard for me," because I'm also a high-value woman. Or when they say, "Oh, I want a man that makes $100,000. I require a man that makes $300,000. Oh yeah, I require a man," and it's always one-upping each other. So here in this case, yes, I know you don't really care about this article. I don't either, but it does give us validation into what we've talked about many times, that women are going to compare you, and no matter how good you are, you will always fall short. Can you imagine being Ben, like either Ben Affleck or Brad Pitt, and being like, this other guy is better than you? Well, now how do you feel if you're just the average guy doing, living the average life? They said they spilled the beans on who is a better kisser and better in bed. We're going to play a game, Brad or Ben. Alex Cooper, host of the Call Her Daddy podcast, asked Paltrow. The Goop founder responded with Brad, thinking that was the entire game. So who's better, Brad or Ben? And she's like, Brad. Okay, so far Brad won. End of story. Nope, not quite. After Paltrow and Cooper laughed, the podcaster host said, "Who is a better kisser?" She said, "Gosh, I have to remember so far back. They were both pretty good kissers." And then he says, "Who is better in bed?" Cooper questioned. That's really hard. That's really hard because Brad was sort of major chemistry, love of your life at the time. And Ben was technically excellent. In other words, he knew how to hit the joy buzzer pretty well. She continued to laugh. "I can't believe my daughter's listening to this. Am I blushing?" God bless J-Lo and everything she's getting over there, Cooper responded. The Hollywood actress candidly spoke about her past relationships with Pitt and reminisced on how the two met. Now, again, what if Brad was the only guy she had ever been with? Well, there was major chemistry, love of your life at the time. I'm pretty sure she probably could have taught Brad a few extra moves of what she specifically liked, and he probably would have been just as good as Ben was. But then if you're Ben, it's kind of like, well, I mean, I did everything right in the bedroom, but she didn't get that chemistry, fall in love, fall over head over heels for me like she did Brad. And I know I'm going to mess those names up because it's Brad and Ben and two B's. And so already each guy loses in his own department. One's technically good and the other is romantically good. I met Brad on the set of Seven. I think I was only 22 years old at the time. Everyone knew he was the most gorgeous movie star in America. We said hi on set, and it was major, major love at first sight. It was crazy, Paltrow admitted. So she meets Brad Pitt, and up until that point, she had never had a Ben. So that crazy chemistry, and probably everything was great for the bedroom until she met Ben. And then once Ben technically did everything better, now she's like, well, this guy's good at this, and this guy's good at this. Pitt eventually proposed to Paltrow when she was 24, but she broke off the engagement because she felt she was too young. And what happened after that? Date after date after date after date, got married, had kids, got divorced, date, and kept on going. It could have been over for her. Can you imagine being a woman and having Brad Pitt propose to you and you're like, no, I'm too young at the age of 24. She said, I had a lot of development to do looking back in hindsight. In a lot of ways, I didn't really fully come into myself until I was 40, Paltrow noted. So you're going to say that everything was a mistake up until that point? Again, you have Brad Pitt. I don't know how old she was when she was dating Ben, but like, no one's good enough until I hit the wall, until I'm already past my prime, and then I'll decide what I want. Now, how many times do we talk about this being a problem? This is what all women are doing today. But remember, it was 40 years old. She didn't come into her own. And I had such a pleasing issue. I didn't really even understand how to listen to my instincts and act from that place. Paltrow pointed out she was totally heartbroken when she and Pitt called it quits. So she says no to him, and he's like, all right, moving on. But then she's heartbroken. In July 2022, Affleck got married to Jennifer Lopez in Las Vegas after getting engaged in April. So about 2 years after those two broke up. Meanwhile, Podcast Cooper continued to push Paltrow on the spot and asked her a series of questions on her Brad-Ben game, including who was more romantic, more likely to make you laugh, and who's a better actor. She answered Pitt for both more romantic and better actor. So again, at this point in time, she said, Brad Pitt's more romantic, he's a better actor, I fell head over heels for him, and then when he asked me to get married, I said no, and she moved on. Then she dates Ben. Ben is a step down in literally all things, except technically he's better in the bedroom. Why wasn't he good enough? Because now she's looking at Ben and saying, well, technically he's better in the bedroom, but Brad Pitt was more romantic, he's a better actor. I kind of got those butterflies right off the bat, but I didn't with Ben. So neither man's good enough. I'm going to keep looking for one that is now both men. And what happens when there's a third and a fourth and a fifth? Then it's looking for something that's a combination of all the men. She says they're both so talented, but I guess I would have to say acting alone Brad, because if you think of all the different roles that he's done. Paltrow also detailed that Leonardo DiCaprio even tried to make a move on her back in the day. She said he was very loose with the goods when he was 19. I got news for you. He's still very loose with the goods. And good for him. He's doing quite well with the 20-somethings. So she went on to marry the lead singer of Coldplay, Chris Martin, in December 2003, which was 3 years after Ben Affleck. No, I'm sorry. Yes, 3 years after Affleck. And who knows what she did on the interim. Who knows? The two separated in 2014 and shared two children. So he was, I guess, good enough. Coldplay, Chris Martin. I don't know what he looks like, but then divorce time. Why? Because he's not good enough, or whatever else. There's always something with these celebrities. During the podcast session, Paltrow played one last game called F, Marry, or Kill, where she had to choose between each Pitt, Affleck, or Martin. Well, obviously, I'd marry Chris Martin because he gave my two children who are the loves of my life, so I would do that all over again. From who she would choose to sleep with, she says, I think Brad. Now, remember, Ben was the one that was technically excellent in bed, not Brad. Brad was the butterflies and very romantic. So why would she then choose to sleep with Brad instead of Ben? And then as far as the ending, she said, well, I choose to end Affleck. And she says, God bless him, Paltrow quipped. So again, Ben's the best in the bedroom, but she'd not be with him. If she had to sleep with anybody again, it would be Brad Pitt. But Brad Pitt was the most romantic one. And I guess the butterflies, and she felt the most for him, but she'd marry her ex because he gave her the kids. Yet she divorced him. Do you see how confusing this is? Well, this is how women's brains think. She's just being quizzed on it, and she's speaking her thoughts aloud. But I guarantee you, in all these interactions, these kind of thoughts come up. Now, it may not be right away when you're first dating and she's really head over heels and things are going great and it's the butterfly state. But what happens after 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, when she starts getting to thinking? You know, there's that old comic where Superman's asleep in bed after he and Lois Lane just kind of shagged or whatever. And she's sitting on the edge of the bed going, I wonder if I can do better. This is kind of it. And now Paltrow's now married to a Brad Falchuk, a producer who's worked on shows like Glee, American Horror Stories, and Scream Queens. The two tied the knot in 2018. So they've been together for, 5 years? And it'll be interesting to see if she stays with him. But the whole point is, though, that if you listen to what she says, and she says the most romantic was Brad, the best in bed was Ben. Oh, well, who would you sleep with again? Brad. Why not Ben? He was technically the best. Well, she compared, and that's what women do. When they get bored in the relationship, when they feel like they understand you, you're not as mysterious, you're not as interesting. Maybe, you get into that place where as a guy you might burp or fart in front of her, or she does it to you. Maybe in the morning you got some stank breath or something, and she doesn't necessarily like it. Each one of those knocks you down because she may not compare you to anybody else at that point. She might say, well, in the morning, boy, he's kind of stinky when he gets out of bed. But back in the day, a woman would assume, well, all men are like this because I've only had the experience of one man. But now, when you have the experience of 5, 10, 20, 30, 50, when it comes around to tying the knot, what ends up happening is, and I did a video on this a couple years ago where it's actually I don't know what the term they use for it, but it's confusion of choice, where people that went to a fair, they were given a free T-shirt, and they were very happy about the T-shirt. When they gave them the choice of 2 colors, most people were still very satisfied with their choice because they only had 2 colors. When they were given a rainbow of T-shirts to choose from and people picked their free T-shirt, later on when they were interviewed, many of them wished they had changed a different color. Why? Because they had more choices. Well, and because they had more time to think about it or whatever. But nowadays, and this is something that is it's not detrimental to men because men are probably still dating these women for a certain period of time. They're still sleeping with the women. They're still enjoying themselves. And if men are smart enough not to fall in love with the wrong woman, it's very good for men. But for the woman, what she's doing every time she does this, she's adding another T-shirt to the pile. And by the time, I don't know what the average is now, whether it's 5, 7, 10, because the number is constantly skyrocketing and the number of people getting married is going very low. But by the time a woman's ready to settle down and get married, how many has it been? 7, 10, 15, 20, 30? You don't know. It depends on the woman, and it depends if she tells you the truth or not, which she's not going to do. What is it? Multiply by 3 and add 7. So what happens? You're the T-shirt she chooses right then, but she's going to compare you to all the other T-shirts she's ever put on, and she's probably going to like things about this T-shirt over the other one, and in the end, and it's a losing game, and that's why the divorce is so high. It's why women file more. It's because usually, once they kind of settle in and you've lost the mystery, they're going to think back to, well, Ben was so much better in bed. Brad was so much more romantic. X, Y, Z, and they decide, to keep looking. Gwyneth Paltrow did it. Many women out there do it. No matter who you are, you're never good enough. Guys, I will leave it there. We'll have another segment out for you either tonight or tomorrow. I know it's kind of hard when I have to talk low like this. I'll boost the volume in editing, but I can't get my normal crazy because I got a neighbor right on the back side of this wall where their bedroom is, and I can tell because sometimes these apartment walls are kind of thin, and I can usually tell when they go to have their little bit of bedroom fun because I'm sitting here and I have to put these headphones on because otherwise I can listen to them. Not exactly the greatest thing in the world. The good news is he's relatively quick, and she's loud but quick. So, hey, I guess you take the blessings where you can get them. We'll see you in the next one.